The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Good to be able to talk to you.
Fire away and I'm ready.
All right, let me do the intro. Welcome back to the Retro Rangers podcast. I'm your host, Grimm, and I am thrilled to welcome the author of over 100 books on hockey, baseball, and the New York City subway system, my friend and mentor, Stan Fischler. Stan, thanks for coming on. How are you?
Well, first of all, George, it's a pleasure to chat with you. I'm a big fan of yours.
Thank you.
The Ranger books. Both of them are different in different ways, and I've always been fascinated with goaltending and your goalie books like a treasure. The other one is too, in a different way. Actually, the other one is so wonderful because of the oral history and getting Cat Francis to talk.
Right,
so
right.
You should keep writing.
I am. Yes, the project that I'm working on now is called Forgotten Blue Shirts, and that will be about the Frank Boucher Era Rangers from 1940 through 1955. That's in the process of working, and I hope to be finished with it soon. You never know when you're going to be done.
Well, you know that era is closest. I wouldn't say closest, but it's so close to my heart because that was my first job out of college when I worked for the Rangers, and it was like going to heaven. And Frank Boucher was my boss. Unfortunately, it was only for the 1 year, and then he got canned. But it was a different kind of hockey. It was almost like almost like family stuff. I mean, the Ranger fan club was like very tight group, and we knew the players.
Oh yeah.
And of course, we didn't need any programming, no more by sight. It's different. I keep telling people, in 1954, my sedan can't be compared with the car that I have now. Different eras, things change.
Yeah. Well, as with the Rangers and the NHL back then, the players were on this team for a long time. You got to know them. Now with contracts and free agency, they're here 1 year and gone the next. So you really don't get to know them that much. But back then, they were there for 5-6 years at a clip. So.
Well, that's you made a good point, and it was a long time to be with a team. Particularly if you like the coach or the manager, but as well as I did with our discussions, there were coaches you wanted to play for, and then there were coaches who were a pain in the neck, like Phil Watson.
Yeah.
However, conversely, and of course I'd studied baseball because I grew up in Brooklyn. We had Leo DeRocher as a manager of the Dodgers, and DeRocher was a tough guy, but he also was a winner, and so you got to, there's a balance.
There's
a balance. It's very hard to figure what's
right.
You take a guy like Gallant. Gallant is the closest thing to being a natural. There's a persona about him that makes him almost. You can't say anybody's going to be an automatic winner, but there's something positive about him. And part of it is reflected in the record. So, So anyhow.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Your last book was called Tales of Brooklyn, and I thought it was a really nice little read. I mean, even though we grew up in different cities and we're from different generations, it really struck some chords with me because you really brought back some real good memories of growing up in the city. Punch ball, stick ball, stoop ball, playing all kinds of street games, Spaldings, which I think you paid 5 cents for. I had to pay 29 cents for. family living in the same building or at least close by. It all brought back really, good memories for me. Okay, what was the origin of that book?
Well, the origin, the book was never supposed to be a book. That's number one. I'm going to tell you something that I never told anybody else about this. Not that it matters, but about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I forget. I'm in Israel, and I was visiting my oldest son who lives in Portland, Oregon, and they introduced me to this gal, and we kind of hit it off. But she was in Oregon, and I was in Israel, so we did a lot of writing back and forth.
Okay.
And in the writing, I would tell her stories about my growing up and family, and she reacted very positively to the story. She would comment, I like the way you're telling the story about your Aunt Hattie, blah, blah, blah. Well, anyhow, we had a breakup. We broke up, and, we're not in touch anymore. But there was something about her reaction that made me feel that I'm writing something a little bit extra that somebody likes. So that was like the earliest. So then, what really made it interesting was having worked and covered Chico Resch, the goalie, for a long time. He was very my closest friends. We did at least one book together, one goalie book. Anyhow, I used to go on the road with the Devils, and I was on the road with Chico. We're on the road, and we go out to dinner. We're smoozing, talking, and for some reason, he became very interested in what life was like in Brooklyn when I was growing up, because he grew up in Regina, Saskatchewan. It's a totally different world. Sure. And I tell him stories. And there was one story that resonated with him. It was about my family's love of ice cream, my Aunt Hattie being the most passionate lover of the ice cream. And there's a story about, we had a blizzard that began on December 26, 1947, that lasted for a long time. It was the all-time blizzard in New York. You can look it up. Everybody talks about the blizzard of '88. But anyhow, in the middle of the blizzard, my Aunt Hattie, who was visiting us from Albany, discovered there was no ice cream. So there was a panic went out. SOS, we got to get ice cream. Oh, that's easy to say. You're in the middle of a blizzard. The streets were like Montana. Cars were abandoned. Nothing was happening. Anyhow, the whole point was she said to me, here's $5, Stanley, go out and get it.
Wait a minute, Stan. I lost you.
Ice cream home. I'm feeling very good about it. I put it on the kitchen table. All of a sudden, I hear a groan because I was taking off my galoshes and everything. And I walk into the kitchen, and she looks at me and she yells at me, "You mean you got Reed's?" Well, Reed's was the cheapest ice cream, because there was only one store that was open. It was a cheap store.
Right.
And there were full good ice creams. There was Borden's, there was Horton's, there was Seal Test, and Breyers. And she was a connoisseur of ice cream. So it would be like, if you were a connoisseur of wine,
right,
you were used to champagne, and I came back with Thunderbird, you throw it in the garbage, right? So she threw it in the garbage.
Wow.
and then I was crushed. Now, when I look back 60 years, whatever later, she was a connoisseur. She wasn't going to accept any crap ice cream.
Right.
The whole point is, Chico loved the story. And he'd ask me every once in a while, you got to tell that Aunt Hattie story. Tell her. So about a year and a half ago, I get an email from him. He says, my wife Diane wants you to write that story down and send it to her. So I wrote it down, I sent to her. I get an answer 2 days later. Write me another story about Brooklyn, whatever. So I wrote another story. And she said, want a third one. By the third one, I said, the hell with this. I'm going to send it to friends of mine. Why don't you watch it? She only get it.
That's right.
So I started to mail it to a couple of cousins. I sent it to friends. And by the time I got to the 20th, now I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it because I'm thinking about all these stories. And my best friend, who I grew up with, who was involved with a lot of stories, not with us anymore, his nephew, Mark Gold from Gold's Horseradish. Mark is like my kid brother now. So I'm sending this stuff to Mark, and there's so many things about his family in it. So I get to the 20th, and my agent says to me, my literary agent says to me, if you do 30, we'll do a book. So I did 35, and we got a book. And that's how Tales of Brooklyn came about.
Very good. Very good. There's a chapter in there about how you, got into hockey. You went to a Rover game on a rainy Sunday afternoon when you were supposed to go to see, I think, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Yeah. Snow White was like Star Wars became. It was a must. My father said, I'm going to take you on Sunday afternoon to go see Snow White. Is playing at the Globe Theater in Times Square. So Sunday comes, I'm all excited. Snow White, wow. So we didn't have a car. We never had a car. Everything was subway or trolley cars. Jump in the subway, get out at 50th and 8th, and it's pouring rain. We didn't have an umbrella. Sunday afternoon. The theater was 6 blocks away. We didn't have an umbrella.
Wow.
My father looks up, and what do you think is there at 50th and 8th Avenue, Madison Square Garden? That was the old garden.
Yes.
And in those days, they had doubleheaders, hockey doubleheaders, not Rangers. Rangers were written. They had hockey doubleheaders Sunday afternoon. My father sees the garden. He says, son, we're not going to see Snow White. I'm going to take you to see a hockey game. I didn't know what the hell hockey was. So
yeah.
All I knew was that I wasn't going to see Snow White, and I was furious. I started crying. My father never gave in to me. Never gave in to me. And he said, well, he didn't actually say. What he did was he pulled me by the arm, and he pulled me into the garden. I'm in the garden now, and there's no escape. So now there was a doubleheader, like I said, but the second game is the Rovers. The Rovers were the Ranger Farm team. So we got there only in time for the second game, and I'm furious, and I see my father's rooting for the Rovers, so I said, I got to get even with him. I'm going to root for the other team, which was Washington Eagles. And so happened that my hero, my radio hero, was the Lone Ranger. I love the Lone Ranger programs, and
okay.
I picked out a guy on Washington named Normie Burns, who was blonde, and I made him like the Lone Ranger. He got a hat trick. My guys won, my father's team lost, and it's okay. And, I got even. I knew he was going to take me to Snow White one of those days. So the next day, it was Monday, I go to PS 54, and my third grade teacher calls on me for a show and tell, and I did the goalie, because I love goalies even then. And I got an A. Man, hockey's not too bad. Not too bad. So Saturday comes, he takes me to see Snow White, and on the way home I said, Dad, could you take me to another hockey game? He said, sure. So the next day we went back to the Garden, the Rovers played. I'll never forget this. The Baltimore Orioles, they had the most beautiful brown on brown uniforms, and of course they won. So I was too up on my dad, and I never stopped going after that.
Wow. Good for you.
I have to tell you one thing. There was something special about those Sunday afternoon games. I mean, the family feeling there was really something. They had a fan club called the Blue Line Club, which was pretty damn sophisticated. Put on a show at the end of the year. It's great stuff. And I saved loads and loads of the programs from them because the programs were really great. You would have loved the program because they included, they had a great cover of the garden.
Right.
Inside page was standings and scores from all the leagues. Then they had a thing called Around the Circuit, which is all about the Eastern League. Then the next one was they had the lineup for the Met League game, because there were 4 teams in the Met League. There was always a Met League game. Then the next page, and opposite the lineup for the Met League game, they had a whole page on the Met League by a guy named Howie Mora. And then they had a next one was the Rover game and another story. Then on the back page they had a story, stories about the fans. It was like family stuff. It was very special, very hard to explain to fans today because there's nothing like it in New York. But it was a great time for me. A very great time for me.
Right. Okay. Now, probably late last year you were inducted into the USA Hockey Hall of Fame, which was an honor that was long overdue. How'd you feel about that?
Well, it was unreal. I'll tell you why it's unreal. Usually, when they have halls of fame stuff, at some point, the person who was being lobbied to get in finds out about it, and you have somebody. It's sort of like a bit of a campaign. I didn't have any ever thought about the USA Hockey Hall of Fame. It just it wasn't something that
right.
And nobody. There was no there was no rumors. There was no say, hey, this guy's I'm gonna put in a nomination. There was nothing. So I'm in my older son's place in Oregon in the middle of June at lunch, and the phone rings. The guy says, "Hi, I'm so-and-so from the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame." I said, "Nice." He said, "What can I do for you?" He said, I just wanted to know if you were going to be around." It was a very innocuous call. I didn't, actually I thought the guy was a phony or something.
Right.
Who knows what? He didn't say much. So next day, I get a call from Dave Fischler, who I knew as the PR guy from the USA Hockey. And he says, "Congratulations, you're going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame." First, I thought it was a gag because, people always do this kind of stuff. And then I realized it wasn't a gag. He says, "You're going to be December 9th and blah, blah, blah." And I was aghast. I stunned. And, of course, after I found out that this was legit, I told my son, my daughter-in-law, and my 2 grandchildren were there. I was absolutely flabbergasted and stunned because there was this was out of the blue. It wasn't like I'm running. And I said to the guy, because I knew Dave pretty good, I said, "Dave, who's responsible for this?" He said, "I can't tell you."
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices, and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.